Peace, everybody. Welcome to Capital Combat. The name says it all. I'm Hakeem Branch,
Rob Jarrell.
and today we are going to talk about UFC 264 going down this Saturday, July 10th. And in the main event of this card, we have Conor McGregor taking on Dustin Poirier in the rubber match of their trilogy. So it's split 1-1. We're having one last fight to settle the score, barring a draw or anything like that. But also on this card, we have Gilbert Durinho Burns versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson for a chance to fight the welterweight champion Kamaru Usman. And also we have Tai Tuivasa versus Greg Hardy in a heavyweight fight. There's a few more fights on this card, but those are like the three marquee fights that are going on. Also, if you did not catch the video that we released earlier, Rob did a breakdown of the fights going on that's on the Zone. So check that out as well. So I'm gonna let you talk about that one a little bit, Rob, and then we'll go into the co-main and the main event for this UFC card.
All right. The we're talking about the boxing that's going on tonight.
Yeah. It's Gilberto Ramirez versus the name just left my mind. Oh, Sullivan Barrera. There we go.
So in the preview video for that fight, we got a couple of guys. Gilbert Ramirez, undefeated southpaw. He is recently moved up to the 175-pound division, where he was a former champ, if I'm not mistaken, looking to ply his trade as a light heavyweight. And we know that that is a huge jump for any fighter. You're talking about, sure, it's only 7 pounds, but usually when you get into that, you're getting into upper echelon of weight divisions, because at that point it jumps. The jumps are pretty big from 160 on up. And he's taking a guy who is lifetime light heavyweight in Sullivan Barrera. My prediction is that Gilberto Ramirez should outbox Barrera over the course of 12 rounds. I can't really say that he's going to have the power to knock out Barrera. And Barrera, being that he's got good skills, good size, if not a bit robotic and predictable, can give Ramirez some trouble, especially considering those two fights in which he actually had Jesse Hart out and beat, and Jesse Hart was able to fight his way back. Now, granted, Barrera's not very dynamic, but he's still technically sound. If he asserts himself and as actually responsible, he can make it a tough night for Ramirez. On the main event, because I believe that's the co-main, is Jojo Diaz taking on Javier Fortuna out of the Dominican.
Don't give him too much. Make him go watch the video.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting. The one thing I can say is that's going to be an all-action fight. Diaz is definitely down to stand in the pocket with just about anyone. He did it with Gary Russell. He did it with Tevin Farmer. He did it with Shavkat Rakhimov, in which that ended in I want to say a majority draw or split draw. I can't remember off the top of my head. But check that out. That should be a good fight featuring two all-action lightweights. And I will be surprised if that goes the distance, but I'm thinking it's going the distance. But it will be very exciting in a lot of spots. Check out the full preview in the video. We'll have the link posted down below.
Yeah, definitely. So let's get into this mixed martial arts action. And starting with the co-main event, we're going to talk a little bit about Gilbert Burns versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And Wonderboy is coming off a few wins over some guys that were a little bit lower ranked. He took some time off after losing to Tyron Woodley, beat Vicente Luque, Jeff Neal, two guys who were on a long winning streak. And then Luque, who recently just beat Tyron Woodley. So he's beaten some solid guys. This one against Burns, pretty much, if he wins this, he's pretty much a lock to get a title shot, as he's the only guy in the top 5 that has not faced the champ Kamaru Usman at some point. Burns, his last fight was against Kamaru Usman in a losing effort, losing via TKO on the third round of strikes. And there's a few things I'm going to point out about that, and then talk about who I think is going to win. But before I do that, go ahead. What do you think about this fight, Rob?
It's going to be an interesting fight because Wonder Boy is technically the striker of the two, while Gilbert Burns has decided that he wanted to knock people out, and he has the power, he has the build, and he has the motor to do so. Except when you go against a guy who's much more defensively sound, bigger, and can really just move someone around the ring or around the octagon at will in Kamaru Usman. So it's going to be interesting because I would probably say that his best bet will be to take Wonder Boy down to the mat as often as possible. You want to take away that striking from Wonder Boy. And considering that he's an undefeated kickboxer, he's a guy that can go toe-to-toe with just about anyone except the likes of, say, Tyron Woodley, Darren Till, and Anthony Pettis, which he lost two of those fights by KO? No, two by decision, one by KO.
Yeah.
So he's going to be pretty disciplined. He's going to be looking for that. He's going to be looking for that power of Burns and try to keep it on their feet. Gilbert Burns, on the other hand, once he sees that, hey, this isn't who I am, he needs to take it to the mat and show those world-class jiu-jitsu and grappling skills.
Yeah, and the question is he going to be able to do that? Because Wonder Boy is a master at distance control and keeping his opponents at the range that he needs them to be, which is why his takedown defense has been so great, especially after earlier fights in his career where, a couple guys were able to get him down and he didn't really know what to do down there. He's had the time to work on that and add that takedown defense to his game, in addition to being a karate practitioner since he was 3 years old. So in that element, when they're standing, there's not much that Gilbert Burns, I think, is going to be able to do, because I don't think Wonder Boy will make the mistake of letting Burns get close enough to land those haymakers like he did on Tyron Woodley, like he did on Damian Maia, and like he did on Kamaru Usman. So I think Wonder Boy pretty much picks him apart, and then when he tries to get desperate later on as the fight goes and he's getting those points, if he doesn't get knocked out, he will get knocked out trying to go for those takedowns. So long story short, I'm picking Wonder Boy to win. On a personal side, I'm kind of rooting for him to win because, like I said earlier, he's the only person that hasn't fought Kamaru Usman in that top five. I know they're trying to give that rematch to Covington, but he's just been kind of sitting on the sidelines antagonizing people. Meanwhile, the rest of the division is trying to fight it out and earn their shot. And I think it would be fair to give one of them their shot, even though that first Covington Usman match was really good. I think that the style of Wonder Boy is something that would really pose a technical threat to Usman, and I want to see that from a technical and entertainment standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, what he brings to the table, Kamaru Usman, who's shown a great ability to adjust to whatever his opponents has been doing, is also constantly evolving as a fighter, especially given his last fight where he really showed some good striking skills, which is not to say he was always a poor striker, but we didn't expect
it's definitely
that.
Improved. Right, yeah. It's definitely improved.
Yeah, big so time. I mean, we've seen Usman knock out people as well lately. I'm talking about Jorge Masvidal didn't see it, Gilbert Burns didn't see it, Colby Covington didn't see any of that coming. And the scary part is, from those fights, it's kind of like raised up a notch every outing. So
Right.
yeah, it's going to be interesting. But that's not the fight that's going down on Saturday. As far as a pick, I'm not saying I don't want it to go all 5 rounds.
Well, it's only 3.
I meant 3 rounds. I'm sorry. I think of everything as a championship level fight, even though this is two high level fighters that could conceivably fight for a championship down the line at some point, given how the chips fall. But in a 3 round fight, given that's 3 rounds, I would probably say it's going to go to decision. But crazier things have happened. It just depends on who can impose whose will better. Can
Right.
strike enough, get on the inside, take them down, and maybe ground and pound them, or go for the submission, or is one boy going to maintain that distance, strike precisely, be smart, and not make any mistakes?
Yeah, absolutely. So let us know what you think in the comment section as we move on to the main event. This is the one that everybody's anticipating. Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, third fight. They just recently fought this past January, where Poirier was able to secure a second round TKO. Their first fight was about 7 years ago now in the featherweight division, where Conor McGregor knocked out Poirier in the first round. And rightfully so, a lot of people are not talking about that first fight because those guys that we saw 7 years ago aren't the same guys that are going to show up on Saturday night. Both guys have evolved, both guys have improved, and both guys have been through a lot, both personally and professionally, leading up to this third fight. So we got some new dynamics at play and a lot of questions, especially about the outside activities of the more popular fighter, Conor McGregor. So in this one, we have the potential for it to be a very good fight. And there's no reason for it to be seen that it's not going to be that way. What do you think going into it, starting off?
This is as much as it is a physical game. This is going to be a mental game for not only McGregor, but it's going to be as much of a mental game for Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier has been immensely more active since their first fight up until the second fight, whereas Conor McGregor, while he has been Conor McGregor since that fight, you're talking about their first fight was back in 2014. You're talking about 7 years. Well, yeah, 7 years between the two, or just about. Whereas McGregor knocks him out, knocks the next guy out. Mendez, Aldo, Alvarez. Two extremely hard fought matches between him and Nate Diaz. So that activity decreased once he got to Eddie Alvarez. And, you know, he had that fight with Mayweather. Not to say that he didn't take it seriously, but how serious could it conceivably be taken in boxing? Because it's not something, if I'm not mistaken, that was just an exhibition. That didn't count toward anyone's record. It did.
That was Floyd Mayweather's last official fight, and you know
that makes
technically that's a tragedy in itself. But it is what it is.
But even then, it's not quite the same because he was knocked out. But not only that, does he have that dog in him? Sure, he came back. He fought Nurmagomedov where he was just completely washed, taken down, and then beaten in his own game in the stand-up. Again, like Usman, I had never seen that version of Nurmagomedov at any point in his career. So does he have the will or the desire to go to that dark place that it takes to not only fight at a high level and get into the octagon, but also take on the guy who basically binged a loss that you gave him? And Poirier just seems more apt to do that. Not only that, but now, not only, like you said, they're not the same fighters. So Poirier has a mental edge, and that guy that you knocked out is nowhere near the guy that you've seen in the octagon now. And not only that, I'm staying active. I have a great team. I have the confidence. I have the edge, and I have a game plan, which is going to take advantage of your noticeable um, negatives to your game. And what
Yeah.
was that? He took out that lead foot. He caused McGregor to consistently fight from the outside. Um, McGregor isn't really that great at takedown defense. And he has seemed to rely more on his boxing, on his striking, which
His
makes him
hand
a bit
striking. Yeah.
hand striking, which makes him predictable. As we were talking about early before the video started, he tends to favor leaning to his right to land a jab or up jab and then bring the straight left down the pipe. That's been scouted. That's been scouted probably since the Diaz fight. But then he doesn't have that extra drive to just kick it into gear and impose his will. Once you can't do that, you have to be either extremely smart or extremely precise. And we just haven't seen that with him except with Donald Cerrone. And that is the ghost of Donald Cerrone, not the guy we saw taking on, who was Robbie Lawler and all the other
Who
greats over
hasn't
there.
he fought? Yeah.
Exactly. You're talking about a guy who was at this point fighting like it was 1950 boxing.
Right. And you brought up a lot of good points. One of those things was like the going to the dark place, and that's kind of the scouting report on Connor is where like if you get him there, he's gonna fold. He's not a type of guy that's gonna go to that dark place and thrive and say I'm gonna take this from you. Anytime that a fight has gotten a little difficult, he ends up on the losing end. With the exception of the second Nate Diaz fight, I think he had to pull that one out because Diaz was coming on in those last few rounds, but Connor had done enough work in the early part to secure the decision. That's really the only time we've seen him had to dig deep and win a fight. Any other time against Nurmagomedov, against Floyd Mayweather, against Poirier, and in the first fight against Diaz, and a few like his early loss in like earlier promotion that I can't think of right now. That was the theme. If you got him down and got him in any type of trouble, he wasn't going to be able to get himself out of it. And that seemed to be the case against Poirier in the last fight too. I know a lot of people are talking about those leg kicks, and they were substantial. However, something that's overlooked was the counterpunching of Dustin Poirier. I know you talked about this on camera, off camera. You mentioned that Connor is a very good counterpuncher, which we saw against Aldo, which we saw against Eddie Alvarez, and recently he's become more of a come forward, seek and destroy type of guy, where he has closed his stance in a little bit because he's doing a little bit more boxing centric things and is not fully understanding that art. It's leaving those holes that you said. He's got that tell to where Poirier was able to counter him several times with check hooks and counter lefts as Connor was striking. And yes, Connor did do some good work in that second fight. He landed some good knees. Of course, that shoulder attack that people are losing their minds over because it did do some serious damage to Cerrone. But Poirier was returning that as well. Poirier was able to match him strike for strike when they were in the clinch. And Dustin has a wrestling background, so that's going to favor him more than it favors Connor. So another knock on him was his stamina and his gas tank. Looked like he was fading. Faded against Mayweather. Faded against Nurmagomedov. Faded against Poirier.
Faded against Diaz. Diaz
Faded.
was the very telling fight because
Yeah.
he was in front of a guy who middle name is "Come at me, bro." I take damage. That's his middle name, Nate. Come at me, bro, Diaz, because he would take any and everything, and you literally have to beat the fight out of him, which happens. But then again, not very often. And when he was unable to do that in the fourth and fifth rounds, that's when Diaz was able to start slapping him around, taking him
Yeah.
down, getting that submission. Even in the second fight, while Diaz was still getting tagged, you could see as the fight wore on, Conor was slowing down. He just had to finish it the best that he could. And
Right.
that's going to be, is in this fight, you're going to see the same thing. You're going to see the leg kicks. Now, how Conor defends against it is one thing. Is he going to be able to step in as he sees those leg kicks coming and
Or check
throw
them.
that right? Or check them.
Yeah.
So what plan do you have for that? And now is Poirier looking for you to be more cognizant of the leg kicks, and as soon as you check it, take you off balance, maybe take you down. So it's going to be a chess match, and someone's going to have to be able to take someone's punch better. So
yeah. And at this weight, Poirier has shown a much better chin. Poirier has shown much more durability because, Conor hit him with some solid shots, and Poirier, kind of was like, okay. But when he landed his shots, he was kind of pointing at Conor like, hey, you felt that, or, I got you. And that, especially for someone whose game is to talk people out of their game,
mhm.
that got Conor as well. And so that brings up those other outside the ring things. Like, I watched the pre-fight press conference and some of the interviews, and it sounded like Conor's not even acknowledging some of those things that led to him losing. He's like, oh, I wasn't focused, or, I was just being too nice and things like that. You're going to see the old Conor and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of the media and fans were like, yeah, sounds legit. It doesn't. Like, it's not. Those are excuses rather than saying, hey, he countered me at will. I had no answer for the leg kicks, and the wrestling and the constant exchanges got me tired. If he's not addressing those, he's not going to win. So
Exactly.
he talked about distractions outside, which for a fighter happens, which for anybody happens. You can be distracted by outside things. But when you're the elite of the elite, the stuff's not supposed to matter. And unfortunately, he has the elite drawing power to make people come see him, but he doesn't have that elite go time gear like, say, a Floyd Mayweather or even an Oscar De La Hoya, John Jones, Kamaru Usman, George St. Pierre. The list goes on. Like, those guys had those outside influences as well. Floyd Mayweather has one of the largest entourages you could think of. Manny Pacquiao, same thing. But when them lights go on, they on too. And there's nothing that, you can do about it because they have put the preparation in and they believe in themselves and they can shut all of that out.
Right. I mean, he tends to remind me of Adrian Broner in this.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
The only difference is he was able to sell his liquor brand for $400 million, and now he's still got that money. So technically, he doesn't really have to fight. So we have to see, is this a pride thing, or is this a love of the game type thing? Because we've seen it happen to the best of fighters. I mean, like I said, Adrian Broner, a lot of stuff going on outside the ring. Tyron Woodley has a lot of stuff going on outside the ring, as in addition to having his fair share of wars, in addition to being older. Now, granted, they're only 32, but I mean, 32 and you've been fighting for the last, 10, 11, 12 years is a lot of wear and tear on someone, especially going against elite fighters for the better part of 6 or 7 years. And we're talking about
absolutely
the Diaz's, the Nurmagomedovs, the Jose Aldos, I mean, the Poiriers. Again, that is a lot, and it requires a lot of focus, and it requires less distraction. So that's why you see some current champions, they don't get too involved with a lot of outside things. Look at Usman. He's taking killer after killer and killing all of them.
Yeah.
And that's just a euphemism. I don't want to be canceled for saying killing. but here or there. But you see those guys. Look at what's my guy Miocic.
Stipe,
He's just
yeah.
a firefighter. He goes to work, he goes to train, he comes to fight, win, lose, or draw. Same thing with Cormier. Cormier only really has one other job outside of fighting, and that was his announcer job. And I think he has the occasional Fat Boy commercial. We always see something with him. And he makes me laugh. So, but that's just how it is. It's how can you minimize the distractions as best as you can if you're not going to do that in order to train, to go to that deep, dark place, to go to the dungeon and come out ready to take out your opponent. So we're going to see that in this fight. We're going to see how much he has left in the tank. If he loses, I really can't see him continuing his career in the same manner that he's doing, because I don't know if he has to go back to the drawing board as far as his training, or does he just get a new team? I mean, Justin Poirier, if I'm not mistaken, he's with American Top Team, correct?
He is. Yep.
And those guys do not play.
Yeah, not at all.
And considering that he trains out of Ireland, his hometown, his home country, that's probably the biggest distraction, because he's the man there. I mean, when he's not pissing people off, he's the man in Ireland. Maybe he needs to get out of that and into somewhere else.
He did. For this camp, he set up his own thing in LA, which ain't much better,
LA.
honestly. Yeah.
You got the guys going to Big Bear, Denver, deserts, whatever, and you're going to LA. I mean,
right.
The only person I've seen train in LA effectively was Manny Pacquiao, wild card, and even that has its own share of distractions. So
yeah, a ton of them. There's one other thing I wanted to bring up was like we talked about, a lot of people talking about bringing back the old Conor with the trash talk and the antics and everything, and he did that, and Poirier was looking at him like, bro, this act is tired. I see right through you. And it came across that way to probably mostly everybody. Like, it came off like, yeah, he's trying to sell himself that, this old guy is here and all that. And the one trap I see for Poirier is him possibly seeing all that and seeing through him and being caught early, because he's like, all right, I've taken this guy's best punch. I've taken everything he's had. This guy's a wounded dog right now. He's ready to be taken out, and him getting a little lax and catching something that he doesn't see. That's really the only way I see him losing this fight. Otherwise, I think he's going to be pretty, I wouldn't say dominant, because Conor's got a lot of speed. He's very accurate, and he's going to land. But I think it's going to look a lot like that second fight where, because Conor is Conor, when he breathes, the crowd, the commentators, everybody's going to go crazy. However, he's going to be getting countered again at every turn. He's going to maybe be eating leg kicks. And if Poirier is starting to fake those leg kicks to where Conor's starting to try to check those, he's going to open himself up for takedowns. Having to get up several times off of those takedowns is going to wear him out. So I see Poirier taking this, because I don't see anything other than a knockout. I can't see Conor getting the choke. Can't see him doing an arm bar. Can't see him matching Poirier's wrestling and doing some ground control, getting some ground and pound. That's just not who he is to begin with. So I don't see him bringing that out against somebody who does all those things better than him.
Right. I think McGregor will land early. It's just how often.
Definitely. Yeah.
Because he's going to want to come out and prove a point that what he fought before is not him. So I can see him starting landing early with his jab and fighting from the outside, whereas Poirier will probably take his time to find his timing, because again, McGregor stand-up is really good, and you just can't take it lightly. So
right,
he's going to get caught early, and I think once he gets that timing, you'll see that that same counter punching that we saw in the first fight, and he's not going to come out directly with the leg kicks. I mean, that's just giving away too much of your game plan. He'll probably try to get the timing down, do what he did, go for a couple of takedowns, see how successful he is, and then we'll see the leg kicks, toward the end of the first into the second. I do think it gets to the third. Is this a 5-round fight?
Yes, this is a 5-round. Yeah, this is the main event. All main events are 5 rounds. Strangely enough, like we were talking about the Wonder Boy and Gilbert Burns, that probably should be a 5-round fight. But most of the times, all main events are 5 rounds. All title fights are 5 rounds. Everything else is 3 rounds. However, Nate Diaz and what's my man Leon Edwards just did a 5-round fight as like the third attraction fight. So it was like not the co-main, but the fight under that, and they did 5 rounds. So
that's all under negotiation. That's all.
I guess so. But yeah. So we're both going with Poirier. Yeah, if it goes to like the 3rd round, I definitely don't see Conor winning. Like, he has to do this in the 1st round. We have seen that he is a huge front runner. And if he does not get it done by the end of the 2nd round, he's not going to win. I would be highly shocked if he got a win past the 3rd round. So, right. Yeah, we're both going with Poirier. If you're picking Conor, do you agree that it has to happen early? Do you think he can carry his power late? Let us know in the comment section. If you think that there's something else that Poirier could do and use that to secure the win, let us know in the comment section. If you're a little hurt because we weren't too favorable towards Conor, too bad, so sad. But you can, say, hey, you're going to be sad come Sunday night in the comment section. Spoiler alert, we won't be, but you can still type it. So that's all we got for you guys. Make sure, like we said, check out the video for Rob's The Zone boxing breakdown. Hit the subscribe button because we're going to recap both of those cards the following days afterwards. We may watch them a few times to break it down, to really get those technical things that you come to expect from us, like we just talked about in this video. But subscribe so you can see those. Hit the bell icon so you can be notified when they are live. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Capital Combat. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Till then, fight on.
This is round 1 and you've already lost. They don't seem to see that everything we've done is coming and cost. My fists are on fire. I perform till I perspire. My demons are in a rage. Keep thinking that it's a game. I kick crime, hurricane. I told them I don't play. I'm liquid.
Black Street Fighter.